Welcome to a special episode of the NERO Show featuring Chris Johnson from Outdoors Pro and Grant from GC Performance.
We'll talk about the differences between the SL7 and the SL8.
Grant tells us why fire emojis are the only way to talk about the bike industry in 2025.
We'll talk about why 40mm tires are the future of road cycling.
All right, let's get into it. I don't know, I feel like it's almost illegal to have two Americans on Talk Tires and it not be Dylan Johnson, but we're going to have a go anyway. Boys. So Cycling News article just came out. Lab tested 40mm road tires are faster for nearly everyone, and here's why. So this is our mate Josh Croxton. He's back at it again. He's pretty much ticked as many of the boxes I think as you can tick when it comes to laboratory testing with this stuff. So he's done the wind tunnels, he's done the rolling resistance testing, and he's done pedal efficiency testing across two different wheel sets, a set of Hunts and a set of those uber wide, the gravel tires, the Zip Explorers.
What speeds were they at? I'm sorry.
So he's done he put it in meters a second, which I was kind of odd. 9 and 11 meters a second, essentially 35 and 40 kilometers an hour. But before I dive into the results, because I do want to pick some of them out. What is your bias coming into this chat, boys? So Grant, start with where are you sucking the Kool-Aid on this? Where are you before we look at it?
I mean, I've been in the industry long enough to see these kind of trends happen where there's always this new thing coming out, a different color lure, let's say for like fishing. There's always these different type of things that they go ahead and try to make fresh and make people want to buy it. I was against the 28 and 30 tire scene for a while. I was riding 23s for a while. I was on high tire pressure. I never really say never to anything. So now I'm a huge believer in the 30 mil tires. I absolutely love the way they ride. But 40 mils to me, I don't know where it ends. I don't know where they stop. I mean, if you have this sleek looking lightweight race aero bike, they have to accommodate that. They have to make that bigger or make it able to do so. And of course, if they're testing at these higher end speeds, you got to think a 40 mil tire is going to sit taller. So it's going to be able to carry better top end speed as well. I mean, we sell them in the store, but it's usually to our more endurance customers, the customers who have a do-it-all bike or Roubaix. But as of right now, I don't see anyone going out to buy the 40 mil tires for any kind of performance boost or any kind of, looking to get an edge on the competition. Just in my case.
So I've ridden those tires. I've been riding them for quite a while. I got them from Pirelli months ago, and I threw them on the Reserve, the 4044s. And I think I first had them on the NV Frey, which has clearance for 40mm tires. And then I threw them on the Crux just in the last couple of months here. I think they're a great tire. I mean, I tend to agree with you, Grant, that yeah, maybe if you're looking for peak performance, maybe that's not what you want right now. But I think for the average guy who's going out and riding a road bike, who wants comfort and still wants a decent amount of speed, I think they're a fantastic tire. Like I've said before that I think they're a tire that everyone should try, especially because it's at least 10 millimeters wider than what most people are riding these days.
Yeah.
But it's plenty fast. I mean, again, I threw it on the Crux. I went out to like a faster road group ride. It was great. Like didn't slow me down at all.
So Grant, you're not full Hambini, like, get this away from me. I hate this industries.
No, because
so you're kind of open to it.
I'm always open to whenever they release a new bike. I'm very open to anything.
All right, so let me just quickly pick through then these results, and we'll talk about it. So yes, aerodynamically there is a penalty, 100%. So on the Hunt rims, switching from the 26 to the 40s will cost you 5.7 watts at 9 meters a second, 10.4 watts at 11 meters a second. I'll keep using the meters a second because that's what they did in the article. Just keep in mind that the 11 meters a second is essentially 30 kilometers an hour. Okay? Sorry, 40 kilometers an hour. At that same speed, switching from the Hunts to the Zips. Now, remember, the Zips have the much wider internal rim width. It will only cost you 2.6 and 4.8 watts at those two speeds. So the takeaway from there being that a rim that is more optimized for this wider tire is causing you less of an aerodynamic penalty, but an aerodynamic penalty. Full stop. Okay. So then we move to the pedaling efficiency thing. Now that's the jig that they've got in there. Now I won't pull up the graphs because I think this is actually behind a paywall. So I will sort of adhere to that because they've done quite a bit here. But with the pedaling efficiency, switching from the 26 to the 40C tires can save you 55 watts at the 11 meters a second on the wider rim. That saving grows to a frankly ridiculous 75.9 watts on the wider zip rim. So again, showing that wider rim works. Looking at the raw data from the pedaling efficiency test, riding at 360 watts on the 26 mil tires, a power that could only hold for around 5 minutes, switching to the wider tires would put me down to 284 watts, a power that he could hold for well over an hour. Taking that kind of to the next level. So that's a cobbled road, obviously. Now, we're not all riding on cobbles. I get that. So this is the whole middle ground now of, okay, smooth roads. Obviously, the differences are much smaller. But once we get bumpier and bumpier, this thing just completely takes off.
I mean, there's a reason why track racers still run a really narrow tire, a high PSI. If it's a perfectly smooth road, like our road to an A1A are very cured, very well groomed. I don't see the 40 to give you that much of a benefit over like a 30. I think you'll really take that aerodynamic penalty. But I mean, yeah, in certain situations, obviously, I think there is a use for that tire, 100%. But do I see it being the next big thing, like road Grand Tour cycling? Not yet, unless you just make bikes that we're starting to see it. They're trickling into 35 compatible C tires and bike frames, but I don't know. It's got to be a long way.
What about your riding experience, Chris? Because you've ridden these, right? So what about if I come at this from like the pure performance perspective? Is there a scenario for you yet on the road where you are actually seeing a performance benefit yet?
I think for the riding that I'm doing right now, I don't think so. I think that probably maxes out at like a 32 at the moment. I've felt like 32 on the road on any given race bike is probably enough. But if I were doing mixed terrain rides, if I were going up into the hills and some kind of like light gravel, maybe some washboard roads, I think these would be great tires, right?
Yeah, like the N+1 bike.
Yeah,
Do it all bike. Yeah.
The do-it-all bike, I think this is great. I think for what I consider to be like a modern road bike that has just wider tire clearance, I think this is a fantastic option. Because at that point, if you're riding that bike, I don't know if you're really that concerned about, being like the tip of the sword. I think you're just kind of maybe going out and having fun. And if that's the case, this is probably the tire that most people should be riding, right? We're not quite there yet because it just still seems so wide.
Yeah. I will say that on my shelf, I stock the 40s. And I had about 6 customers come in, and they're all just that rider who just enjoys riding bikes, has a Roubaix, has a Crux, does some group rides, does some leisure rides, and that was a tire that they loved. And they absolutely swore by it.
I hear you, and I hear what you're both saying. You're dead right. Like the mixed terrain, bit of light gravel, the endurance dudes are coming in and buying it off the shelf. I get that. But that narrative has been around for a while. These results, though, I think we're blowing over what these results show. So going from a 26 mil tire to a 40 mil tire on those Zip Explore wheels is a 76 watt saving. 76 watts. That's a Hambini training plan amount of watts being saved. Yes, that's on cobbles. We don't all ride on cobbles. I get that. But clearly there's a middle ground. This is the first time I've seen this. Anecdotally, right? So this has been my thing, and I've never been able to fully articulate this, but we have this crit here in Sydney called Heffron, right? And the road surface is deplorable. It's like slabs of concrete. And when I started riding the wider tires with the wider rim internals, you might think I'm mad, but I saw a 10 watt increase in what power I could do for that criterium consistently for about 6 months. Like, and to a point where I was like, I genuinely thought the power meter was broken. Now, like, I'm putting out more power, right? So it's not like it's saving me watts, but I could never work. Now, I'm not that heavy, so I'm sort of 66, 67 kilos. And so this rough race, I would always just struggle. I'd get battered up and I couldn't put power on it. Running the lower tire pressure and the wider tires, I could put more power out. And ultimately, I did find myself being a little bit more competitive at that event. And there's this one line that he talks about in this article that I don't know if it actually describes this, but he says that this is regarding the pedaling efficiency, right? He goes, cobbles at 9 meters a second, the efficiency ranged from about 63% for the narrower tires to 73% for the wider tires. At 11 meters a second, the same range was 68% for the narrower tires and 78% for the wider tires, meaning equivalent setups were around 5% more efficient at higher speed. So he's essentially saying that he was able to put out 5% more power or through the system on the wider tires. I kind of feel like that almost vindicates this bizarre feeling that I've had for
what you were feeling
the last few years.
I mean, and maybe it's just a case of it being that's the biggest thing they stress, is just how much comfort plays a role in being fresher and less fatigued. I mean, overall, you know.
Grant, do you think this is? I mean, I think we know the answer, but like, do you think this continues now? So we'll see a new batch of Aero bikes probably in the next 12, 18 months. Do you think they'll be now factoring, maybe not a 40 mil, but factoring that type of development into the next series of bikes that we see?
I like to think so, but the trends really haven't been putting it that way, unless the Cervelo S5 I know has a 35 mil clearance, but the new Y1RS I think is 30, maybe 32s. 32. The Madone I think they say is 30s or 32. Like they really do stress the Aeros being like, hey, a little bit narrow tire. You don't need to go this crazy wide. But you know, again, this is the industry. At the end of the day, they're trying to sell bicycles. They need to come up with ideas to go ahead and get you off your old bike into a new bike. So why not push a bigger tire clearance on there? If it makes sense, then yeah, we could see it.
Is there a level of aero optimization there where just the bikes haven't caught up yet? Right? Like we're talking about, you know, I rode a Canyon Aero Road 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And from what I'd read, that bike, what they suggest is that the front tire is a 25 and the rear tire is a 28, right?
Yeah.
And now we're looking at everything going, hey, it really should be 30 and above. Are we looking at this next generation going, they're actually going to build it around an optimization of 32 to 35? And then we're just going to go up from there with the next generation and the next generation? That's where I think it's going to head. At least that's where I hope it does.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I can see that too. Yeah, I mean, I think the Scott foil's the same way. I think it was a 25 front, 28 rear. But now you're starting to see these spy photos of like these wheels coming out that are deeper in the front, skinnier in the back. And then you're starting to see a bunch of people talk about wider tires on the front. And with a wider bike, you might be able to make it more aero. I don't know.
That's going to be an interesting sales pitch in Florida. The full mullet setup. How are you going to sell that, Grant?
Yeah, if pros are winning,
you're just gonna point to Remco and that's it. Like you're not gonna.
I don't do it anymore.
That's all you have to do.
I'll be honest with you. The bike shop mentality and the bike shop blueprint has changed. It used to be people would come in the store, no idea, I'm looking for a road bike, point it out. Now you got marketers. Now you got influencers like yourself. Now you got YouTube. The customer pretty much knows what they want as soon as they walk into the door, and it's just our job to go ahead and assist with that.
Yeah. All right, slight tangent. You brought it up.
Okay. I have a question here too.
Yeah. So they come in. They know what they want.
Yeah.
What's the differentiate? I kind of asked this of Edwin the other week, but like, are we talking internal rim widths here? Like, what detail are we going into?
To a point. I mean, obviously, like if they pick a store out, they know what we sell, because obviously not one store sells everything where we are. So they know what we have to offer. Usually, let's just say a Tarmac SL8 Pro. And they'll be like, hey, I'm looking at this bike, but I'm debating whether or not I need this handlebar or if I want to change out the tires to this. Or so it's a little nitty gritty things, making it tubeless, ceramic speed, all that yada yada. But they'll usually have another bike on their list that they're kind of going against each other. So then it's just my job to sit there and give the pros and cons. And I'll try to be as honest as possible because, I mean, as much as I want to make a sale, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that rider's happy too. In all honesty, I know people get a real bad sales vibe from a salesman, but I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt my wallet.
How many of the people that walk into your shop have basically already made up their mind, right? They've watched all the YouTube videos, they've read all the articles, they've read all the Weight Weenies forums, the Trainer Road forums, and all you have to do is essentially sell them the bike versus maybe back in the day where you knew more than them. It seems like now the consumer really has access to everything. That's been my experience in a lot of shops around here.
Easily. I see it so many times with even some of my sales experience or even me going into other stores doing bike videos where I'm asking questions. A lot of the sales associates are under knowledge. They don't really have like the internal rim widths or the tire clearances or whatever the case might be down to a pack. But like, I mean, I've talked to you about this yourself. Your Crux 2x builds alone, people came into my store and were like, hey, have you seen this video of this guy doing this? I want to do that. And we sold like 4 or 5 of them like that. And yeah, they're like, oh, you made the 2x Crux. We want to do that. And we did the builds, and dude, it is crazy how big the influencing way or just marketing has been a tool for sure. They're pretty much made up on their mind a lot of times.
Yeah. It seems like today, it feels like the consumer really has all the information that they need, right? And they can get the opinions from everywhere. And so by the time they walk into a shop, you know, they're going to walk in and get the opinion of one salesperson versus the 20 people who they've already read about on the internet. And I always think that's interesting.
Yeah. And there has been times where I've been stumped. People have asked me questions about bikes. They're like, well, comparable to this, what do you think about this? I'm like, I have no idea on that subject. I'll try to do some research, but I don't know.
Counter.
Yeah.
It's more confusing than ever. So, like, I get accused of this all the time. Oh, I'm an industry shill because I like wide tires and disc brakes. No, I just really like wide tires, and I much prefer the performance of disc brakes. And there are, you know, a good number of people that will try and tell you that, you know, a 2015 SL4 is a superior bike. Yeah. And they'll come up with some really compelling arguments for it. And so I actually kind of almost do feel sorry for, I mean, I'm sure you guys get this as well, but like, I get a lot of questions about what bike, this versus that bike, this versus that bike. And it is a really difficult decision, especially given the amount of information out there and the amount of specs that are out there.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think, and I've realized I've dwindled this in my head the way I have it spun up. I know it sounds bad, but the YouTube people watching us, it's like a small percentage of like what the real world customer is. I mean, we have these people that are like full on detail oriented and take every single word we say and they're like, wow, okay, I need to overanalyze that and go into that and make sure that there's nothing better than that. Whereas the normal customer's like, hey, I've seen this bike online, on the pros are riding it. I want that bike. But to your point, in my DMs all the time, I get people saying, I have the opportunity to buy a 2019 S-Works SL6 versus a SL7 Pro with these kind of wheels. What do you think is better? I'm like, I don't know. Whatever you want, man. I don't know. I'm like, I'm trying to be as honest as possible, but I don't want you to get the wrong answer. And I don't even know what they look like. You just ask me words.
Just get an SL8.
Yeah, just get an SL8.
Just get an SL8. All right. Can we have this chat then? It's time. It's time. I put in the notes SL8 versus SL7, and I just thought we'd have a couple of little points under it. No, seemingly there is a vast difference. So I haven't ridden either. It's my bias,
you need to.
Obviously.
You got.
Why not? Why not? We need to get into that.
Get into that. Yeah, I just hate them.
No. You gotta get the marketing guys on there, man. You gotta get on S8.
Yeah, I would. But so talk me through it. Maybe yourself, Chris. Like, do you want to start us off? Like, where are you with the difference on these two?
So I think we have to go back a little bit. So I came from a Venge. That was just a bike that I had. All of my friends had tarmacs. Right? I'm in Southern California, so this market is just saturated with tarmacs. Everybody has a tarmac, and so the way that I was a little bit different was by having a Venge. So I had like the first generation Venge. I had the Venge Lunch Race, which was like a 1x build way back in the day.
Nice.
And Grant knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like that bike a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that bike was super cool. And then I had the Venge Vias for a little bit. That was a great bike. I'm sure it was a nightmare for you mechanics. And then I had the Venge Disc, and I think I had actually a few of those in a couple different colors. So going from that and riding that, I don't know, 5, 6, 7,000 miles a year, I immediately jumped over to the SL7. So like just a straight frame swap. Swapped all my components, the wheels, the Revol CLX 64s, 11 speed Durays at the time. Swapped everything over. So it was like one day I was riding the Venge, the next day I was riding the SL7. And for me, it was, I mean, it was just a fantastic bike. And I think universally, I know everybody wants to hate on Specialized, but I think the general consensus is that it's a fantastic bike, right? So I rode that. I had two of them. The first one I had was like that chameleon green one, and then I had a black and white warranty frame one towards the end, both of which I thought were great. And then I jumped on the SL8, and I've been on that, again, same deal, right? I was riding the SL7, 7,500 miles a year, and then swapped everything over to the SL8. So my comparisons are really like frame to frame to frame, not really much of a mixed componentry in there. The SL8 is, it's good. I think it's good, right? I think everybody wants to think it's like the latest and greatest and like the best thing in the world. I can see Grant smiling. Like, it's a great bike. It's a good bike. Is it better than the SL7? I don't know about that. I mean, I think you could argue that it's not. And I struggle to know if that's like nostalgia to the SL7 because I loved that bike. But I don't know. There's just something about the SL8 that to me, it's maybe so good at everything that it just lacks like that one bit of characteristic or that one bit of character that really makes it like great. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I get it. I get it.
Was the move from the last iteration of the Venge to the SL8, or the SL8 to the Venge to the SL7, or SL7 to SL8 more of a jump? Could you notice anything in those spaces?
I would say there was a big difference between the Venge and the SL7.
Okay.
I mean, it was just all throughout
Really?
all the words. I think so.
I mean, well, no, not disagreeing, but like everyone lives and dies and says that the Venge is like the stiffest, the most responsive bike they had. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it is crazy stiff. Like, it feels
Yeah.
like it's probably the stiffest bike that I've ever ridden. I'd say the front end is probably on par with how the SL8 is on the front end. I think that's a really, really stiff bike on the front.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
Probably
yeah.
a little bit more relaxed in the back.
Yeah.
But I just felt like the mannerisms of the SL7 were a lot better. I kind of got it. I understood why all of my friends liked the tarmac. They just loved the way that it climbed. They loved the way that it descended, the way that it handled. And I just loved the way that it, the classic phrase, like held its speed. I loved that about the Venge. And I felt like the SL7 had most of that, right?
Okay.
Going from the SL7 to the SL8, maybe the handling was like a little bit better. Maybe it was a little bit better mannered on the road, a little bit smoother. And that's coming. I also had an Athos as well. So I kind of understood a little bit of the DNA of that bike and maybe how it carried into the SL8.
Do you have the Rovell bars on the SL8?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always had those. And I think that would actually be a great combo. If you were to put those Revol bars on an SL7, I think you may have the perfect bike.
It's called the SL 7.5.
That's it. Well, and if you go back to the white papers, I think when the SL8 came out, if I remember correctly, like a lot of the Aero savings were from that bar. If it was like an 8-watt difference, I think 4 of those 8 watts came from that bar. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and say this. From us selling it, I think the SL8 has been one of the best received bikes by the consumers out there since the SL7. Now, the SL7 came out during the pandemic time. The demand was crazy. Every single person that came out with a bike during that time also said it's just as light as the SL7. It's just as fast. Like, people were definitely marketing after that SL7 because it was so simple yet so redefining at that same time, I guess. Like, it was a good looking bike, really good looking bike. The one thing that I could say that the SL8 just stuck out to me, and I had the SL7 Pro and I went to the SL8 Pro. The one thing that stuck out to me the most with the SL8 wasn't like the aerodynamics or anything. I didn't really feel that big because I have pretty deep wheels as is. But the compliancy for that bike vertically on the SL8 is insane. They did a lot of good things from taking like the engineering from the Athos, and the really skinny seat stay is really they slimmed down that seat post, they slimmed up that bottom rack area, and like for me, comfort's huge. I'm 200 pounds. I got bad back. I'm not even supposed to be on a bike. I look ridiculous on a bike. And I think that bike did an amazing job at soaking away a lot of whatever kind of discomfort I was having on the SL7. Now, that's just maybe I got better as a rider over time. Also, that I could be playing into it, but they also did shave a lot of weight off the bike from the SL7 to the SL8, which 685 grams of what they advertised it for the S-Works unpainted, like the ready to paint color, like no one else is doing that.
No.
Unless it's the Athos, but like for like a full race bike inner cables, like I was like, damn, that's crazy light. So I think they did a good job there, but like the aerodynamic stuff, I didn't really notice that much. I mean, I'm usually riding groups or in front or whatever, but yeah. I mean,
Like if the testing wasn't as independent as it was, I would honestly call bullshit on it. I just don't know how they have managed. Like, you look at that bike, and obviously we don't have the skills of Jesse Coyle here to be able to sit here and just stare at watts. But it makes no sense to me how fast that bike tests.
No, you're not the only customer. I mean, you're not the only person. I have customers come to my store and go, "There's no way that bike is faster than the Venge. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it'll be faster." And then meanwhile, I got like specialized guys in my ears, like, "Dude, on our test, we were testing that thing against like the S5. Dude,
Yeah.
way more
Dude.
aerodynamic." I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?
Yeah.
Like how?" I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, it's. I think it's just all like like talking, like just be like, "Oh, Madone crushes it. It's the most aerodynamic bike ever." And like I'm like, like that's their testing that they were saying, and it was just kind of just like back from talk. But then you have like Tour Magazine doing pretty good tests on it, and yeah, I don't know how those tests translate over to real world.
I don't know either, but it is funny when you think about all those like Tour Magazine, the top 10, and that the SL8 is in that bunch, because if you were to line them up against a wall and you were just to look at them and pick them out, I don't think that you would think that the SL8 is as aero as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is bizarre. It is. I don't know how they did it.
Even when you get quite close to it and you look around at it, like to me, a Propel looks way faster than it. But it's not. It's like 8 or 9 watts off minimum, and even like the Cycling News one was even more. So, and it was legitimately competing with Scott Foils and S5s. So I don't know whether they've tricked the. I don't know.
I don't
It's
know, but
something else.
they did something to me this year with the SL8 where it tricked my brain, because I used to be a full aero guy. Now I'm loving the big front end with the skinny seat stays. I don't know why. I'm like loving that look. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like an aero bike to me, like the Gen 7 Madone, I'm starting to be like, and now I'm like, yeah, give me skinny seat stays. I don't know why. It's weird.
I think a lot of these aero bikes that have come out recently have just been atrocious. I mean, to look at them, they're hideous. They look so bad. And I don't know if that existed back in the aero craze of 2016, 2017, 2018. But man, I see these ones now and I'm like, did I used to like the look of that bike? Because it looks terrible now.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to ride that thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hang on. So name me some current ugly aero bikes here. I think we
What's
might
that
have a different
Bianchi that
opinion.
just came out?
Oh, dude.
Oh
That's
no,
my
that's
favorite
beautiful.
bike.
Beautiful
There you
bike.
go,
Oh
Chris.
my gosh.
Beautiful bike.
Dude, that bike to me is
Are you
like
guys nuts?
phenomenal.
No,
It's
no
a
chance.
piece of art.
Yeah.
Oh,
I what's it called? The super chasm?
yeah,
I don't
something
know.
like that.
Yeah, that bike to me, it's just different. The same love that we have for the Colnago Y1RS, like it's out of the
That's a good
box.
looking bike.
Yeah, it's out of the box. It's not these like just like the way the top tube goes in, it looks like a dent, and I'm like, that looks cool.
What about this bike
definitely
that
good.
Dave Arthur was riding, this 3T that he rode at Strada Bianchi? Was that an
Ooh,
aero bike?
Good point.
Yeah, I like that bike a lot too. I
Have
don't know
you
why.
you had any experience with the 3Ts, Grant?
No, a bike shop down in Miami asked me to do a couple videos on them, and I never really got down there to do it. But I like the look of that thick head tube and then the skinny back end. I don't know why. It's really cool, like the skinnier seat stays, but that thing has a chunky head tube area, and it looks insane. To me, I like it. It's huge.
All right, let's pause real quickly and have a quick chat about today's show partner, Silca. So as you guys know, we have been talking about the Ultimate Tubeless Sealant for the last few weeks here on the show. The Ultimate Tubeless Sealant is injectable through the valve. It seals a puncture up to 6 millimeters and lasts up to 6 months. So that means you're not annoyingly having to put more sealant in your tires every couple of months. You have real faith in it over half a year, which is pretty cool. Now, I've been using the sealant really the last 6 months. I've had a few self-sealing punctures as it's gone along. If you would like to try Silca's Ultimate Tubeless Sealant, go ahead and use code NEROSHOW at checkout for 15% off. That's 15% off everything on the Silca website. So you can go and get the full waxing system, which we use here as well. So that is code NEROSHOW at checkout for 15% off. And a big thanks to Silca for supporting today's episode. So if you took a poll of your riding buddies, Chris, would they like to see the Athos killed and a Venge returned, or the other way around?
I think they would. I think probably 75% of them would stay on tarmacs, but myself and a few others would jump to the Venge.
Yeah.
And I don't really know too many people down here who ride an Athos. The Athos is a weird bike to me, simply because it's just as expensive as a tarmac. It's just as expensive as the other bikes, but it doesn't have that. To me, there aren't a ton of selling points for that bike. Yes, it's light.
Yeah.
Yes, it handles really well. Yes, it climbs really well. But at the end of the day, like, you can get all that with an SL7 and an SL8 for the same price. I don't know why you would buy an Athos.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a great traveling bike. That's our biggest selling point. You're great to travel with it. It's easy to take apart, but it is a hard, like when it was the SL7 and Athos, it was a kind of difference. But now with the SL8, I mean, it's very similar, the same of the two.
Oh, for sure. I have people message me and they ask me, like, "Hey, should I get an Athos or an SL8?" I'm like, why would you get an
I mean,
Athos?
if they ever redesign it, the only thing I could think them doing is making it literally an S8 copy with just exposed cables, and then like they'd be like, "Oh, you get the convenience of that."
Just make an S-Works titanium bike at that point. Just go
Titanium rim
full,
bike.
Yeah. So actually, that's interesting. So, okay, so no interest in the Athos. I mean, that lines up, I think, with what we would see here. Chris, you have ridden the Scott RC. Am I right in saying?
The Addit RC Pro? Yeah, I have it.
The Addit RC Pro, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic bike.
Yeah. Could you give us a little bit about it, maybe?
Yeah. So it's the Addit RC Pro. I don't think it's the highest end one. I think it's like the next tier down. It's the one that goes for like, I think, $9,000 or so. Same one Grant did a review on shortly before I got it. I've been riding it for probably 6 weeks. I might have put 300 to 500 miles on it. I think it's great. I think for me, it is probably the closest thing that I've ridden to a tarmac. It's just really playful, super snappy, climbs really well, descends really well. It's in a straight line, like it's right up there with the best bikes that I've ridden.
Interesting.
And there are very few of them around here too, so I feel like it's kind of in a world where everybody has a tarmac. It's great.
Do they market it as a lightweight bike or a do-it-all bike?
I think they market it as a lightweight bike. Most of the comments I received in messages were perplexed at maybe why it weighed what it weighed, which I think is around 15 and change. I think everyone thought it would be a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they did in some of their marketing. They did some aero gains, like I think with like the new integrated handlebar, they did some watt savings there and stuff like that, but very small.
I think the stat that I saw that it's like 7 watts off of what's the Aero bike?
The foil.
Foil.
The foil. Yeah, it's like 7 watts off of the foil. So it's still a quick bike.
That firmly puts it in the like one bike to do it all category rather than the TCR sort of climbing bike category. Yeah, definitely.
I sold one to a customer. He came off of a older Propel. He has a Allez Sprint, and then he had a Windspace Agile, and then he got this bike. And he probably already put like 1,200 miles on it, and he said it's his favorite bike out of all the bunches. And it's just he's super ecstatic about it, so he couldn't be happier. And he rides like almost 4 days a week, so he had no complaints on it, which is really cool.
Are they difficult to get, Grant? I've had some people say that they've called around to shops to try to get this bike, and like no one has it in the country.
Yeah, it's a brutal thing in America for Scott. For at least with the new bikes. They're starting to get stocked now, but when that bike released, the customer knew he wanted it. He came into my store. It was right around Black Friday. He's like, "Hey, I want to buy that bike." I'm like, "I'm gonna call them," but right now they're saying, I think it was in April 2025, and this was November 2024. I called my rep. I'm like, "Hey, when do you think I get that bike?" I think he's like August. I'm like, "Man, you got to give me like just say something closer so I don't feel as bad telling him." And he's like maybe the first batch will land end of January. And I think the bike somehow we got like one of the first ones in the country, and it landed like the beginning of January. The customer's stoked on it, super happy. Yeah, it's literally, if you talk to any Scott dealer on a new product release, it is it's like going fishing blindfold. I mean, actually, it's like two of the same things actually, but yeah, it's like taking a risk for sure. You don't know what you're gonna get. Yeah.
I've heard from a lot of people too who have had Scott Addicts in the past, like the previous generation, and they like love it. It's like this cult classic here in the States where, everybody knows somebody who had an Addict. Like, oh yeah, the new Addict, it must be so good. I loved my 2013 Addict. It was such a great bike. Let me ask you this, Grant. What about the wheels? Like, I think that the wheels are actually one of the best parts of this bike. These I think they're Synchros Capital 1.0s. They've got the DT Swiss 240 hub, just like super light, like super crisp, quiet, stiff. Can you get just the wheels, or are you getting complete bikes only?
No, you can get just the wheels. They sell those whole wheels. You can get those one-piece wheels, the crazy like $4,800 Synchros Capitals. You can get the 2.0s, the 1.0s, the 1.0S as well. But yeah, they're hookless. Yeah.
What is the perception? I'm curious. What is the perception from you guys on Canyon?
Well, you're meant to hate them, aren't you, Grant?
Yeah, I'm built to hate them.
Yeah,
it's in our blood right now.
I do think they're losing a bit of shine. Just even from it was a really, especially the Aero, it was just a really easy bike to recommend to people, who are in that kind of performance space, budget conscious. Well, I feel like it's lost a bit of that shine. Whether the competition's got a little bit better, some of the finickiness of the builds. Yeah, I don't know. And because obviously there's no bricks, it's interesting. I think because there is no bricks and mortar of it, and the only visibility of it you see in Australia is just from the odd person who rides it, I do think that is actually impacting it a bit, because some of the online retailers here that do also have bricks and mortar places are managing to bring really good product in, and it's been quite competitive. So I think it's fallen off in the last 2 years, personally.
I say it's the opposite where I'm at. I say in America over here, the online world is just ruling, for sure. And no matter what it is, when you're talking about buying something, the budget always comes down to what am I getting best value for? So if your price point is $6,000 and you have all these bikes lined up, you're still going to look at Canyon and see what they're offering. They usually do have the better components, the better wheels, maybe a power meter, whatever it is. They really do have a ton of stuff. As much as I hate to say it, I mean, I made a couple hate videos on Canyon, but they do have crazy good value, and obviously they have an amazing marketing campaign. I think that as more people buy them, more problems come to light, like anything. The more you make of it, the more issues you're going to have with stuff. And, but I think they're doing a decent job at that as well. But the amount of Canyons I see on the road now, it's a lot. I say like every 1 of 5 bikes to the Canyon. Yeah, really, it's crazy down here. I don't, and they're customers of ours that maybe bought a bike 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Maybe it's their second bike, maybe it's a tri bike. I don't know, but yeah, they're hitting it hard, and they're doing a good job at marketing for sure.
I think they must be going after those major markets, because I would say too that it seems like they're on the rise out here. It seems like it's the bike that, you have like the value conscious consumer, and they look at, an SL8 at $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, and then they look at an Aero CFR at $10,000. Maybe it doesn't have a power meter or whatever, and they can just get this package bike. And so I've seen a ton of them out on the road these days, and it's it's surprising.
Yeah.
But you guys don't have you don't seem to have the competitively priced Giant or Merida. And that's where we do. Like the Propel is just a legit side-by-side comparison for an Aero
Yeah.
when it comes to value here.
Yeah,
And the same with the Reacto. So there is that. And people will, I've seen, at least in the last 12 to 18 months, people will tend to lean towards the Propel just because it's got a bricks and mortar around it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I reached out to Giant multiple times. I had actually another Giant representative reach out to me. I've called so many Giant stores around my area, like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, wherever, to go do videos on them. They don't stock a single Propel. They don't stock a PCR. And I'm like, hey, what do you? I'm like, I want to advertise your store. I want to get a video out there. I think that they are really doing a good job at price points, and that's the first thing people look at. And I try to work with Giant, but it doesn't make sense. I'm like, hey, can you send me a bike? I'll send it back, whatever it is. But yeah, it's very difficult to find a Giant out here, and I think that they have a really good value. So I don't know what's going on, and a lot of those Cube and Merida bikes, they have crazy good value, but they're not over here in the States. So Canyon is the front runner. Yeah. I actually had a meeting with Cube to try to get a bike over here. And I was like, I'm not a dealer. There's no dealers in USA, so like I think I can really showcase this bike and show off what a good value it is, yada yada yada. And like, yeah, we just can't get into it because of import fees and stuff like that. I'm like,
all right, gents, you're going to help me with a dog or a fast bike this week. There is no sitting on the fence is the rules to this. You must go one way or the other. So let me run you through it. We're looking at a Specialized Allez 2023, size 54, slammed fork, 130 mils, -7 S-Works stem with a custom headset conversion kit to fit SL7 stem on Allez Sprint, a Roval 38 mil carbon handlebars, D67 hyper wheels, 60 front, 67 rear, ceramic hubs, 28 GP5000, setup tubeless, Ultegra Di2, 236 1132, Pro Stealth carbon rail saddle, dead stiff, just wants to go in a straight line and weighs 7.95 kilos.
dead
It's a big
stiff.
boy, he's 90 kegs. What do we think, gentlemen? What do we think?
I don't hate it.
Gosh, I mean, it looks uncomfortable. It looks very, very uncomfortable.
You've ridden a few of these in your time, Grant, haven't you?
I love it. I've ridden the first gen Allez Sprint. I love Allez Sprint builds. The SL7 Allez Sprint, it's not my favorite. The first gen was a cool looking bike and had this cool backstory to it. But this thing looks like a crit machine monster.
So what's he doing at the headset there? What was he's done a conversion kit or something? What's going on up there?
That bike, although it's internal cables, the stock configuration is external. So you have to buy like a 3D printed cap to make it internal, to make it look like that. And the wheels in the back is a 68. It's not a 67. The hypers are 60, but yeah, he misput that. But dude, I mean, for a crit race bike, if he can push those big wheels, I mean, that thing looks, I'm sure it's stiff as a board. I mean, dead stiff is a great description because you got alloy on top of stiff hypers.
Yeah.
I had those wheels. They were definitely, they beat up my L5 a lot. Look at the hood position.
Yeah.
Dude, that guy is...
Yeah, I hate to say it, I think it's a fast bike. I think he's 90 kilos. I'm gonna say he's got a 310 watt FTP and he's got a big nasty kick on him.
Oh,
and once he gets that big gear going, I think this rig will suit him very well. It's not a bike I would want to ever ride, but I can see it. I think it's a fast bike.
Snappy, hold speed well.
I think for him, it's a fast bike. I agree. Not a bike that I would go for, but I think it's a fast one for him.
Now, the second dog or fast bike is been sent in by G Performance, and I think that the specs on this, you might be able to help us out with this particular person's spec list. Grant, could you maybe fill us in with it?
Yeah, so it's a SL8 Tarmac Pro size 56. We have a couple custom upgrades on there. We have a Dorimo ultralight carbon fiber zero offset seat post on there. We have there the new polymer handlebar in a 110 by 38 configuration with a 90 reach on it to go ahead and optimize for Sphinx position aerodynamics.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a 90 reach, dude. I'm getting aero.
So it's it's a 90 mil stem.
No, it's a 110 stem, but the reach on the handlebar is a 90.
Gotcha.
It's
so it's really interesting. Oh, it's a little trick. Okay.
Yeah. We got a 1x setup with an SRAM power crank, just like Tadej Pogacar was riding in the Tour de France on his TT setup, in a 165 configuration as well because we ride similar positions. A 54 tooth chainring, I think Garbrook, because we push watts down here.
Mm-hmm.
I get dropped off a lot of rides, dude. Just letting you guys know. Ultegra Di2, Nova to ride Aero OSPW cage.
Oh, there it is. There it is, kids.
Yeah, dude. Talk about aero penalty.
Yep.
No, the thing is a oversized pulley wheel that is optimized for aerodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love it. Code GC Perf Nova 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then Far Sports wheels in the Evo configuration. These are the wheel sets that I raved about. 50 front, 50 rear, weigh at 1,190 grams. Ceramic speed bearings inside. 23 millimeter internals. 30 millimeter externals. 24 millimeter. Yeah, so yeah. Beautiful bike. Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to start us off here. Those are actually, they're Panaracer.
Oh, Jesus.
Agilis, but they're in collaboration with Polymer.
Oh, collab. We got collab tires.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, they're 700 by 30C with TPU tubes in there.
Oh, TPU tubes, of course.
But I'm going to start off by saying this. This is my take on it. Nothing says cashed up YouTuber who rides 30K a week to a coffee shop and back with like some white spokes. That's what I'm going to say.
That sounds like a very, sounds like a comment someone I know would make. What do you reckon, Chris? Initial thoughts?
Well, I have one question, Grant. Is this like an extended seat post?
No.
What is your inseam on that thing?
I got pretty long legs.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know a seat could go that high.
Yeah, it's a 380. It's a 380, but I'm over the recommended where the Dorimo should be clamped at. Yeah.
I have to say, I mean, this is not my style. I don't see this one working for me. There's a power meter on it. Yeah, you got that.
SRAM.
Is there a reason you went for the Pro instead of the S-Works frame?
I can't afford it.
He spent it paint. You missed the one of the main details here.
What was
of
it?
The white. Are they white carbon spokes? Is that correct?
They're white painted carbon spokes.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, my friend said it looks like I ride an SE bike.
Yeah. So, to me, this is a great example of how to take a really beautiful frame and just turn it to shit. So you have absolutely we outed you at this point. Yes, this is Grant's bike. The white spokes for me, that is just an example of horrendousness. I don't know what's going on there. The one by Shimano system, I'll allow that. I think there's a certain amount of ingenuity almost that's gone on there. So you've got the 5411 is the big gear for you.
Yeah.
Those handlebars are terrible. Like I do think you need to reconsider your bike fit, like dramatically. It's a huge drop. Like get on board with the modern times, Grant. We're all going up.
Grant, you're talking about your bike, your back here, buddy.
Dude, but I grew up watching Peter Sagan slammed 140 stem, dude. That's what I grew up on.
True, but was Peter Sagan riding white spoked wheels? No,
he
probably was actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about it. Yeah.
Do you fit yourself on these bikes, Grant? Do you go to a fitter?
No, I'm believe it or not, I have my training in fitting. I've been to Specialized 3 times, retool, all that stuff like that. Done tri-fits. Been in the wind tunnel, which is pretty cool as well.
Oh,
But I
sick.
don't actually, yeah, I don't actually sell fits anymore because it's every fit, like I told you, every fitter has their own niche. Its riders change over time, and it just wasn't a good use of my time. Fits take a lot of time. You want to be personable. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 hours, and I do everything from sales, from building bikes to marketing, and it's stopped me from doing fits. Now myself, I just go out there and I kind of have a good idea of where I feel okay at, and that's it.
The nail in the coffin for me is the Panaracer tires set up with tubes inside. Like at this point, just go
Okay,
somewhere
well,
else.
okay,
Like,
okay. So,
like,
so in my defense, before this, I had the Craft 65/75s on there, and I had the Aero tire on the front, the Continental, and a 30 in the rear, and yes, and that looked great. Now
mm, mm.
I like this. I like being a little bit different. It's different a little bit, and
It is.
yeah.
Yeah,
I actually asked them for the white spokes. I said, hey, make them stand out, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if it catches on.
we will. I won't be watching, but we will see. No, it's a dog for me. What do you reckon, Chris?
Yeah, sorry, Grant. It's a dog for me. There's just a lack of cohesion with the build across the board.
How do I leave
We
this?
love you, but-
How do I leave out of here? Yeah. No, it's perfectly fair.
What do you guys think about the predictions on gear for this year? You guys excited about anything?
Yeah, I mean there is a ton of stuff to look forward to. Rumors of companies releasing new wheels, rumors of new group sets. I mean, we already saw some leaks from Shimano with the mountain bike, somewhat 13 speed stuff, which I'm pretty ecstatic for, being working on the stuff. But yeah, there's a good amount of stuff coming out. I'll definitely take the back seat on these kind of conversations. But what do you think, Chris?
You work at a bike shop. Take a back seat.
I can't.
Mate,
What?
you've
So
got more
it's-
tentacles out there in the industry than bloody anyone else.
The,
You probably
benefit-
know. That's why you're not going to talk
Yeah.
about it. You're like, oh, you
the
wait.
The
Yeah.
beautiful thing to my YouTube channel was I loved it at first, and then I realized that my mouth got me in trouble. So not like trouble, but just like I have a ton of friends in the industry, which sounds bad, but you know this is what I grew up doing. So I hear
All
rumors.
right, well,
and
here's the rule.
yeah.
We're allowed to talk about it if there's been a leak on Wake Weenies.
Of course,
All right?
that's how it goes.
Okay.
If it's on the internet, it's fair game.
Yeah, exactly.
So someone
So I
start
don't
off.
know. I mean, no two ways about it. We'll obviously see a new Force road group set. That will I wouldn't say I'm hyped about it, but I do think that it's going to be the first time, realistically, that there's a genuine. I use this word very, very carefully, but value competition for Ultegra, because if we get that SRAM braking that's on the new red in a Force price, then I think we're in a really good position personally. So I wouldn't say I'm hyped about it, but I do think that that's going to be probably the biggest release as such group set wise.
I agree. I think that's going to be the group set that everybody gravitates towards this year. I hope it comes out. I mean, I think we've seen some leaks on Cycling News or Velo. One of those outlets leaked it. I think that's going to be really cool. I think they'll come out with an Explorer version of it that I think the gravel world will jump to. I think this is kind of the year of helmets and shoes, maybe. I predict there's going to be quite a few. I think Giro just launched a shoe today. Maybe it comes out tomorrow. The new Empire, SLC, SLR. It's going to be really cool. Stoked about that. That's a shoe that I've been riding for a while with laces. I really like that one. I'm doubling down on my Crux prediction for this year. I think that's going to be one that comes out later this year, just based on the product cycles. If it's 4 years
I hope
in
so,
October,
man.
we've got to see one soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Not that there's anything wrong with the current one. I just think that's kind of the nature of their product cycle.
So
yeah,
is the Crux the S-Works gravel bike? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's just kind of like what they would consider their fast gravel bike, I think.
Right.
So you had like
so that's the competition for an Aspero or a
yeah, that's their race
yeah.
gravel bike.
Okay.
or the Grail. I think that's the Canyon version. The Grail is like the fast one.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so for sure. I mean, I don't know. They did the revamp of it for the UDH. The bike is absolutely, I think they did a really good job on it, but people just Specialized is one of the innovators, and their slogan is always innovate or die. But literally, they have one, two, three, four, five bikes right now on the market without integrated cables. And people are like, yo, if you just made this thing integrated, you could launch it as a new hype bike.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yep.
like for sure. Like it's
Yep.
the people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to buy a new Crux because they might integrate an extra mic.
I think you bang on with helmets, Chris. It's funny. Like I'm looking for a new helmet at the moment, and I'm finding. I know the Evade is like it tests really fast. I just hate how it looks. It's just like such a storm. Oh, I just yeah. I can the helmet gap's too much, but the actual competition for it in that sort of speed of helmet isn't great. So I would love to see a bit more competition in that, and I think you're right. I think we will see some more because people are starting to just accept. All right, an Aero helmet, 24 days, 24 hours a week, 24 hours a day. Got there in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all I ride, Evade 3. But the Evade, I will say this, when you wear a Prevail compared to the Evade, and like I don't know if it's just placebo or whatever, but when I stick my head up and look over, I noticeably hear quieter with the Evade on than a Prevail. Yeah, I don't hear as much wind chatter, which is
Yeah.
it's something you can feel.
That's interesting. Like that POC Prosen Air that I've been running, that is a big thing with it. Like it is super fast, but when you turn your head to the side, the amount of wind noise that you hear in your ears is actually quite disconcerting, and you will really struggle. It's fine in a race scenario because you've got to be aware of people around you, but in a riding generally with traffic around you scenario, it's not ideal in any stretch of the imagination. Chris, I know this is maybe a question for yourself, but you seem to always be fiddling around, tinkering with your own sort of personal setups and different configurations of things across bikes. What have you been tinkering and what will you be tinkering with in the future?
Oh man, I've been tinkering with, got a 1x build right now. I've got 1x on the tarmac at the moment, which I've been kind of tinkering with, seeing if maybe 1x is the way to go in the future, based on
So just run us through what's the 1x setup that you're running?
Yeah, so right now it's a 48 tooth SRAM Aero chain with Aero chainring with the 1036 new red cassette. So it's got a pretty decent range on it.
Yep.
And then another bike, I've got a 4835 with a 1033. So kind of just looking at like the 1x versus 2x, what's really practical for riding around here and everywhere. I mess with tires a lot. I mess with tires quite a bit, just swapping between different brands and different models and different widths and trying to figure out what works best and what I enjoy, riding and whatnot.
I can ask Grant the same question, but I know he'll just say he's painting his spokes a different color.
Swapping out OSPWs.
And I've got the Explorer that I've been swapping out on the gravel side, just kind of going between a 44 tooth and a 46 tooth to kind of see what works. And then I've got the Scott Addit that has Shimano Durace, so just tweaking that a little bit, figuring out what works, different chain rings, different crank lengths and stuff like that. And trying out some new wheels and stuff too, which has been really fun.
So no, I was just gonna ask you real quick. Would you ever go ahead and put the 13-speed UDH Explorer Red on your tarmac, like how they do on the Pro now? You think? Well, the SL8 can't take it, but would you ever be the option? Yeah.
I absolutely would. I think a 50 tooth chainring on the front with the Explorer group would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be another big thing that we're going to see this year. If we talk about gear that we're hyped about, is our bikes that are UDH compatible, where you can run a 1x with that massive range in the back. Actually, that's probably my favorite group set right now, is that Explorer group. I think it's probably the best group that SRAM has made in a long, long time. I think the range is fantastic.
It's a crazy group.
So yeah, I mean, I'd ride it all day long. I think the simplicity of it, it's not necessarily that much lighter when you really look at it, because that rear derailleur is so heavy. So if you're looking for like a weight weenies build, when you add the weight of that cassette plus the weight of that rear derailleur, it's pretty heavy. But yeah, 100%, I'd run it for sure.
I think it's the first thing SRAM have released where it's just not a competition anymore. Like you can always, oh yeah, Duro, oh Altair, you can always have a really good conversation about the group set comparisons. But I think that one it's just not a conversation. I think it's the superior gravel group set, full stop.
Yeah, no doubt about
and
it. They knocked it
where that
apart.
translates to road, I mean, I've done that, Chris. I don't regret trying it. I ran a 50 with the 1036 at the exact race I did last weekend last year, and it was fine. But it's still too limiting for me in 2025 on the road, definitely.
So I think that's, I mean, not to spoil a future video, but I think that's kind of one of the conclusions that I've come to, because on the Melee, I've had that 48 tooth with the 1036. And yes, it's okay and you can get by, but I think you just get to an uncomfortably low cadence.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, are you really saving that much by dropping one chainring and a front derailleur? Is it really that much more simple? And I think too, maybe, a generation ago when SRAM Red wasn't that great on the front derailleur, but now that they've nailed that, again, in my opinion, I just don't know if one buy is really worth it, frankly.
So you did that video regarding the front derailleur. So if someone's coming up to you in March 2025 and asking you the difference between the Shimano and SRAM, do you have an opinion on it?
Yeah, this is one that we go back and forth on group rides all the time. So I think most of the guys that I ride with ride Shimano. I think
interesting. Okay.
The shifting of Shimano is a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more crisp. I think especially the front derailleur, it's definitely quicker. But I don't think SRAM is that far behind it by any means. I think it used to be a huge gap to where you'd say, hey, Shimano is far superior. I think now it's pretty dang close, and I think it just boils down to preference, which is a great place to be if you're SRAM, because you finally caught up, and then you get into the touch points, right? So you get into the hoods, right? I think the new hoods and the shape of those, along with the brake levers, as well as just the modulation of the brakes with the new group, again, I think it's right up there with Shimano. And so, again, boils down to preference in that category. And then you look at just like the ecosystem of SRAM. Like, what is SRAM doing off the bike? Like, how easy is it to live with day in and day out? And I think I've found that SRAM is just really, really simple. Like, over-the-air updates, everything's on the app. It's super user-friendly. So, it boils down to preference. Like, what do you want? I think that the hood shape is maybe a hot take, but I think the hood shape of the new Red Group is actually better than Shimano. And if you look at them side by side, you can see that Shimano still has that. It makes the red hoods almost look small when you look at them side by side. Like they're a little bit taller, a little bit more pitchy, makes them look like the old red hoods. So yeah, I'm a fan.
I'll say this on my Shimano hoods. I rode the SRAM Red. I have the Shimano hoods. Preference wise, I still like the ergonomics. It depends on how you ride your hand position, but like having that little knob there to hold on to, it feels great. Whereas I can't recreate the same comfortability on the new knobs on the SRAM Red. Now, hand position wise, it caters to my hands much better because you do get that extra 7 mils of length on those new Reds. And I like being in the hoods and just having that one finger braking. But different positions on the same hoods, I think Shimano has one more tick in the box. I think they have like more versatility, in my opinion. But again, like it's just obviously preference to that rider and whoever's.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard it articulated is exactly how I would, like you just said, Chris. That's pretty much exactly. And the only thing I will add is just the accessibility to the chain rings. For me, is another sort of tick in the box for SRAM in 2025. So I've actually got a 5642 on the S5 at the moment. And
wow.
Yeah.
I would not, oh my God, like I would never give that back. It's unbelievable because we have a lot of really rolling terrain here. And so you can get that thing in a 5610 and like be pedaling at 72 kilometers an hour. I on the weekend, I was kind of doing this as a bit of a party. It was doing it to almost troll people where I could come past the bunch pedaling at 70 kilometers an hour and get a gap easily in a few situations on the road. And
huge.
it's
crazy.
it's big, but of course you've got the 1036. So
Yeah.
I've still got a 4236, and which is fine. Like, it really is. So for me, that's still a big part, and the livability aspect of it. But yeah, it's certainly close.
Was it difficult to find that 5642?
Not right now. I know it was when the group set initially came
Yeah,
out.
I feel like those are hard to find.
But
They're in stock, right? Or at least in my area. Yeah, they're getting out there again.
Yeah. So no, I was kind of lucky. And then I borrowed a friend's, because when I did Peaks, which is a far more climbing-y type event, I actually managed to borrow the 50-30, what's the standard that they have? I think it's the 50.
Yeah.
50-37. Yeah. Because of course the stitch up there is the power meters in the actual chain ring. So you can't just keep multiple chain rings with power meters around.
Grant, do you have, maybe this is a question for both of you. When it comes to power meters, I know that there's been some issues with those Shimano power meters. I saw that you're running an SRAM, right? Is that what I'm seeing on there, Grant?
Yeah.
Is that because you don't like the SRAM power meter? Is that because of your chainring preference? Because that's, I think, another thing that I like about having SRAM kind of across the board is it's pretty consistent power reading, and it's really easy to live with. What's been your experience on that side?
The Quark is definitely by far, like, just, it's a workhorse. It does its job. Really little failures on there. It is left-right estimated power, obviously, still, because it's just a spider base, but it's giving you estimated on the side. But by far, I think one of the better power meters out there in terms of accuracy. Shimano, we don't even sell them. They're cranks with the power meters on there. Specialized usually gives out stages on their S-Works bikes. We sell.
It's interesting. You don't even sell them now. That's amazing.
Yeah,
you don't sell them, or it's not? Is it 4II now or whatever?
Well, so comes spec'd with 4II, yeah, 4II, and so like if someone comes in looking for a power meter, we'll kind of steer them in a different direction because there is headaches to it, and it's not just for the consumer. Then we have to go ahead and submit a warranty claim, set it up for service. They're off the bike, they're unhappy, so we try to steer them in the right direction. But the SRAM I just did for like a flex, kind of just that was it really.
So most of the pro teams just do whatever's financially best for them, depending on who pays what. But in the last iteration of contracts that were up, I sort of had it on pretty good authority that there were 3 Shimano teams that approached SRAM out of contract saying, we want to jump ship because of the power meter.
Yeah, I can see it.
Subsequently, Shimano came back and threw more money at them to keep them on side. But yeah, it's now got to the point that the pro teams and I do. Yeah, I won't go into too much, but yeah, I know a good few guys that are riding that Shimano thing. It's a constant source of frustration amongst the coaches. That the data, especially when these guys are doing altitude camps and things like this, and the numbers are just bananas.
Yeah,
it's actually like a legitimate performance disadvantage for them.
Yeah, it's a known thing too. It's not even like well, it's 1 or 2 cases. Like you ask anywhere around the world, they're all saying that same thing. And it's, as much as I love Shimano, I don't know why they're not getting on the phone to fix it. But yeah, I could imagine being like in a pro sport element where like, if you win, you win money, and like this is their career and jobs, and they have to work with like well-known stuff that's not working correctly, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, it's sort of I know it's got to the point with a few of them, like they'll know if they're doing efforts at sea level at certain temperatures, that they actually put that in their training notes for their coaches, because it's kind of known that then if you're doing training efforts at altitude and low temperatures, that there will be percentage differences that matter in terms of actual, like what zones they're in and things like that. So,
crazy.
Yeah. And it's having experienced the power meter myself, it's just inconsistently out as well. It's fine if it was just always 5% low or always 7% high, but it wasn't. It was like some days I was World Tour and some days I was Cat 5.
Yeah,
so
it balances everywhere.
It wasn't ideal. But I think you're right. I think that they can, we're seeing the 13-speed wireless stuff. They can release the most incredibly advanced group set known to man next, but they've got to sort that problem. They've got to.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what does a Dura-Ace group go for, Grant?
Retail here is much more. It's like $4,300.
So $4,300 and it's got
with
a
a power
meter.
meter.
Inaccurate.
Yeah,
with a power
meter. Yeah.
That doesn't even work. Yeah, I think that's
It's not. But that's the best thing about Specialized, that they come with 4II, so we don't have to run a headache. But yeah, it's something we stand clear of and stay away from.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a coincidence too, because weren't they shipping them without power meters for a while? And then, like, my guys down here were buying complete SL8s, right? And they were buying full Dura-Ace group sets, having to take off one of the arms, send it to 4II. They'd, put the power meter in there, and they'd send it back. So these guys are like either not riding or, on some other bike.
It was a weird thing for a little bit. I think they sold the bikes without power meters, and then they got like a credit for it, something like that. It's weird. It's weird. I mean, who knows? Maybe Specialized makes their own power meter again.
So is it fair to say you are in SoCal? Is that the official terminology, Chris?
I think so. I think we call it Southern California, but yeah, I think everybody outside of here calls it SoCal.
Okay. All right. Cool.
SoCal.
So I'm interested in the riding scene around you. So we've chatted a bit about it here. Like, we've seen this shift to, like, there's an interesting demographic coming into the sport, but they're kind of aligning themselves sometimes with brands, and the brand ride has become, like, the apparel brand ride has become a real thing. I'm just wondering, just in terms of, like, people getting into the sport around you, like, what are you seeing?
I think a lot of it's still shop based. I know that there are a few brands that are kind of organizing groups, right? They'll get like one guy who's like a map influencer, and he'll, schedule these rides, and he'll get 30, 40 people out. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of new people be introduced to the sport, which is great. Like, we rolled by one of them the other day. We have a little bay here that connects to the ocean called Back Bay. And gosh, there must have been 40, 50 people out there, all just kind of getting into the sport. Some still wearing t-shirts, some wearing like basketball shorts and stuff. And I think that's where the sport's really starting to grow, and that's where people are getting into it. And then, like, we have a Specialized shop down the street that they have like a donut ride on Sunday. And so, people are rolling up to that, and couples and, families and all kinds of stuff. And I think that is where there's really a lot of growth in the sport. So that's kind of the introduction. And then you just have like a whole host of group rides, like, all over the place. I mean, from my house, we're talking about the scene. I mean, from my house, there's kind of a group ride within 4 to 5 miles of here every single day of the week. And some of them are, pretty fast. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just saying, oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of them are pretty fast, and then some of them are, a little bit more leisure, like social. But you can just pick like whichever group you want to roll to. I mean, there are lunch rides that leave at noon from a park that's just like 4 miles down the road, and it's like a fast 75-minute like sufferfest, and it's a blast. Like, I go out there a couple times a year, and it's every single time it's humbling, and I'm like, I need to go back to this more often. But it's fun. I mean, there are a ton of rides going on, a ton of people. I think everybody's into the sport. The weather here is really, really good, 7, 8, 9 months out of the year. So.
And are these just turn up rides, or are these like, do you have to DM someone to be like, oh, where's that?
They're just turn up rides.
It's turn up rides. Okay.
Yeah, they're just turn up rides. So everybody knows that the ride that I often do is called Coffee Crew, and it's Tuesday and Thursday at University and Campus right by UCI over here. And it's just open. Everybody knows that it's 6:15 sharp. Like, somebody goes around the corner and then everybody follows, and it's the set route. We do it the same every Tuesday and every Thursday. And then if you want to do, food park, you've got that on Saturday in Como, and everything's like pretty consistent. Some of these group rides have been going on for 20, 30 years.
Exactly,
I mean, it's been a long time, and it's great. And that doesn't even count like the individual club rides where guys are meeting at some obscure park that they've got a group me or a side chat going, and then you've got all those groups, and you've got gravel rides and mountain bike groups. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
And is that translating into people racing? Because it's, again, like, I come back to sort of what we see here a bit, is that doesn't seem to be happening. Like the group ride is almost ticking that competitive box for a lot of people.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
that's the case. I mean, if you go a little bit further north, there's like the Eldorado Park crits. You've ever seen like some of the guys up north? Like I think guys and stuff used to race those. Maybe they still do them. But those used to go on quite often. But there are very few organized races out here. Maybe it's the
Yeah,
same
right.
out there, Grant, for you, but it just doesn't seem like that scene has really gotten any traction. Or if it does, it seems to get traction for a minute and then it quickly fades because of funding or just lack of interest. And then everybody goes back to the Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning group ride where everybody's just beating each other up for 75, 90 minutes. And then they're coming home, taking a shower and going to work. And I think that's kind of where there's like a lot of, personally, like for me, that's where I get the most joy out of cycling because
Yeah.
I'm an early morning guy, right? I've got to get out, get some exercise, go hang with my buddies. I get like a little bit of socialization there, go smash the pedals with friends, and then come back, take a shower, get my kids off to school and head to work. And it's a blast. Like it's really, really fun. So, but there's just not a lot of racing going on out here.
Is that kind of what you're still seeing, Grant?
No, there's a no, no.
No.
There's a big race scene down in Miami for sure.
Okay.
There's a guy by the name of Kevin who does a phenomenal job putting on gravel races, crit races. They're at different parks, different places. If you're north, if you're south, wherever. But similar to what Chris said, 4 to 5 miles from my house, there's a ride that leaves every single day at like 6:15, and they'll have like, hey, they'll send out. There will be like a WhatsApp group of like 80 people. They're like, hey, Monday is chill chatty ride. Tuesday's Hammerfest 30 miles and up. Wednesday, Thursday, double pace line. And then Saturdays, there's this place right next to my bike shop called The Cove. And you have like 4 or 5 different groups leaving out of there of like different speeds, different sizes from like anywhere from 30 people to like 50 people. And it's like he said, you can literally choose what you want to do that day. If you're not doing that, there's another guy hosting a gravel ride somewhere else. So it really is nice. And that's just in our area. If you go down to Miami, they have a ton of different outlets out there that you can go to. And it's you get to pick your choice. If you want to take it easy or hammer that day and suffer.
I wonder because, I mean, obviously it sounds like, the numbers of people riding has not decreased. Like, and I would argue that's the case here as well. But potentially you have seen that sort of drop off on the racing thing. I wonder whether there's a lot of really talented US riders in the World Tour at the moment. So Magnus Sheffield, Matteo Jorgensen, there's actually a couple, there's a few others, and they're like young, yeah. Nelson Paulus, like there's potential Grand Tour winning sort of capability, certainly in Matteo Jorgensen. Like I wonder whether that's what might break the damn wall to get people into the racing space, to just see Americans.
I'll say this, is that I've seen it definitely taken more serious with training, with gear, with like the people that used to be in the space for more leisure have really gone like into the aero savings, the watt savings, all the data they can on training plans. Like buddies of mine that we used to have, we had this kid who worked in a shop. He was like 16 years old. He was kind of chunky. Dude, the kid's like riding 4 days a week. He's like, oh, I'm doing my 30s and 30s. I'm training, he has like his whole training plan out, and he's just a monster on the bike now. And yeah, it seems like it's starting to kind of punch through a little bit. But like, you go to the Cat 5 scene down here. I never done the racing scene because it's not for me. But bro, they're doing like 27, 28 around the lap, miles per hour, and just all full gas, full sprint. And that's Cat 5. I'm like, yeah, it's very competitive. I don't know what's going on there, but it seems to definitely be picking up, and the training, and I think just like the space of Instagram, the whole rally behind like the pro scene has been getting really good as well. That people just get hyped for it, for sure. Like definitely right now it's cool.
There's clearly an influx. I mean, I forgot Brandon McNulty as well. I mean, there's a half dozen guys, and who could easily win a monument or a Grand Tour in the next sort of 5-6 years. And
yeah,
I think I don't think we should underestimate that stuff. I mean, I was always a little bit cynical of it, but my own personal life. Australia did really well in the last Olympics, especially some of the female swimmers. And my daughter, who's 10, swam around, did bits of training and stuff. But she watched the Olympics and she saw these women winning gold medals, and she's like, "That's what I want to do." And next minute, we're doing squad 3 times a week, much to my disapproval. And it's it makes a difference. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's good for the sport. I think the more exposure we have with, guys like Matteo Jorgensen just crushing it like he did today. I mean, that is
He's a
what
weapon.
really gets people hyped about cycling.
I mean,
go ahead. I'm sure you get people, just an influx into shops that are, dusting off old bikes and stuff because they're inspired by what these guys are doing. And I think it's great. It's been a rogue sport for many, many years here in the States. And I think there's a slow kind of trend up in cycling. And I think it's
100%.
just a matter of time.
100%. And definitely a younger crowd, I think, is getting into it. But could you imagine if Lance Armstrong was doing what he was doing back then now with like today's media? And like the story back then was just him against the French.
It's wild,
and, like,
isn't it?
There was so much hate there, and he would just go out there crushing it. I mean, could you imagine like that storyline today? Like how much exposure it would get? It'd be all over ESPN and everything. That'd be crazy.
Oh, he'd have like 70 million Instagram. Like he would just be a global superstar. Yeah, I totally agree.
We were a Trek seller during that Lance time. And we had the Livestrong bands, and my dad was selling to it. I mean, like I was a kid growing up watching them, but like but that time period was crazy, man. My dad would be watching the tour, screaming like yeah. I'm like in my bed, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, it's wild.
How do you watch pro cycling in the US in 2025? Is it Discovery?
No, it's HBO Max, or I think they just call it Max now.
Yeah, Max, and then Peacock was
so
a tour
subscription
last year, right?
service type thing.
Yeah. Peacock was last year, and I think this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, but I think it's moved exclusively to Max. At least that's where
probably
Charlie Bianchi was, and I think that's where it's at.
Okay, so you can sort of watch those semi-classic-y type, maybe a Paris-Nice.
Yeah,
Paris-Nice is on there now. I don't know if the Grand Tours are going to be on there. We'll find out with the Giro, I suppose.
I wish they showed on regular TV, but it is what it is. It's a sport. That's what we're gonna do. They're gonna put a paywall up, and that's how it is.
What do you think, Grant? How long is it going to take for the industry to recover from all this? I mean, what you're talking about is like it's still kind of this post-COVID wave, and we've got too much inventory, and everybody's got all this debt. Are we going to be out of this in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? I mean, you just did a video today about the bike prices going way down, which is a bummer because if you're someone who wants to sell a bike right now, you can't sell your bike because you can buy a new one for $1,000 more.
Yeah,
like this is crazy. I feel like you have made videos about this. People have talked about this for years. Are we going to continue to see this for the next 2-3 years?
I have to say, yeah. I have to say it could be even longer. I mean, you're talking about an all-time high for deflation. Stores, manufacturers, whoever it was, loaded up on an inventory during that COVID time. And now there's just this race to the bottom where the economy is getting bad, bills are coming due, people are sitting on inventory. So there's this race to go ahead and discount as much as they can to move this stuff because new items are coming out and they don't want to get stuck with it. On top of that, you have one of the most craziest saturated used bike market I've ever seen in my life. That is becoming competition to us retailers. So I definitely think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And a lot of my reps I talk to all say that similar thing. They're like, hey, this was a tough year. This was one of our worst sell through for those products. Nothing to do, I don't think, with consumers. I just think we're just overstocked and overpriced. We're still on those COVID prices.
But I would challenge that though. Like, is it something to do with consumers though? Because I feel like maybe we can talk about this a little bit, but like just the innovation feels like there's not a huge reason to buy a new bike in 2025. Is there? Like, what is really driving people in? And is that causing an issue? Do we need to like start really innovating in the industry so that people are like, oh, I've got to get this new bike because of this and this, not just tire clearance, but aerodynamics, speed, feel? Like, what is it that's going to get people to, I guess, break up this dam of ice that's kind of causing this backflow?
I mean, yeah, it could be a lack of innovation, but that's been throughout the industry for this entire year. I mean, when the SL3 went to the SL4, people would say the same thing. Oh, I don't need it. It's not that much faster. It's always been there. Obviously, we want to incentivize, or they want to incentivize people to buy new products. But there are limitations with UCI. I just really do think that it's not a bicycle thing. I think it's an economy thing because we saw during that COVID time, people were spending money when they had the money and they wanted new bikes and they were upgrading at will for the next little thing that really didn't make that big of a difference, but they had the extra change. And I think that's what's really coming down to, because I said this before, our entry level to mid-tier stuff, very little walk-ins, because that's the middle class. They're filling the squeeze. The S-Works people, I'll take Princeton's, I'll take SRAM Red, I'll take this. And it's like, you know, but I think they're starting to get deals presented to them for people who are, COVID was a time, I'll say this, COVID was a time that really did help stores out that were on the brink of going out of business, because right before then too, it was tough. You know, it wasn't any crazy sales. So it prolonged them, gave them great capital to sit on top of, and now they're overstocked with inventory again. So it's going to be a little while to see these stores who are really in it for the right reasons to hunker down and push through it.
Do you see that segment of like the entry level bike? Let's call it the $1,000 to $3,000 bike. Has that segment essentially evaporated with the introduction of e-bikes and stuff like that? 'Cause I just don't see people buying those bikes anymore.
Yeah, it's that $1,000 road bike, which used to be one of our most popular selling bikes, the Allez, for $700, $800. That was one of the best selling bikes we had. The Tarmacs entry levels, I think, were like 2,000, maybe even $1,800. It really did give people different options. Now, when you sit there and say my entry level carbon bike for like a competitive race bike is $3,000, that's a big chunk of change. It's you know, to be competitive against, it's nothing to bat an eye at. Whereas before, it was like, hey, it's $1,800, but Specialized running a sale for $1,400. You can get it for this. Or even the Allez had this beautiful appeal to it, and it looks racy, and people want to buy it. So, yeah, it's there has been a slow, but also the used market too. You can find crazy good deals for like $2,000 right now.
So hard to sell a bike on the used market right now.
I know.
The other thing you potentially have to factor in is this Chinese domestic market, which is going to start soaking up a lot of a brand's attention going forward. Like just the pure numbers of it are pretty mind blowing. And I don't know, you referenced that factor thing in that video. I don't know. I kind of see that as that being like, well, this is factor saying potentially that's where our future market is. So let's get involved in it, rather than it being a recapitalization of, oh, we're really struggling. I kind of feel like that's more the case.
I really like to believe that a company doesn't want to. I mean, the company that what I got from it, when I got actually multiple sources from it. First, the story broke. I think it was like a Chinese folding bike company bought like 50% of Factor, and then it kind of, or 52% of their majority shareholder, and it was like a 70-year-old company, and then it kind of got recorrected. I like to think that companies don't want to go ahead and let off their shares of the company, especially as established as Factor is. But maybe, like you said, maybe they're going to this company that has this good vision for what they want to go ahead and do. Maybe they have the best distribution setup, or maybe they have ways to go ahead and cut costs. But I don't see it. I mean, if that was the case, I think it would just be like a one-off instance. But you're seeing so many headlines kind of pointing in the direction of like, hey, these people are kind of in a little bit of financial trouble. Nothing they can't work with, because it's $1 million companies or $100 million companies or whatever. So I think that they can go ahead and figure it out. But yeah, it's a weird situation. But also, I will say it's about Chinese bikes, because we sell wind space. I see them on the market. People look for them for the alternative for a cheaper buy, but are extremely sad. That's the worst word for it, but extremely sad to realize that when they want to go ahead and sell it for something different, it does not hold its value as well.
No, don't get me started. That's always been my challenge, right? I've probably taken a lot of heat for buying Specialized bikes and having a bunch of Specialized bikes on the channel.
Yeah.
The reality is you're doing a YouTube channel and no one's sending you bikes. You're buying bikes, right?
Yeah.
You can buy a Tarmac SL7 and you can pretty safely say that you're going to use it for a couple years and maybe you're going to lose $1,000 or $1,500. And at that point, it's kind of a business decision where if I were to buy Windspace or Yolio or any of the other ones, dude, I have to add that caveat. It's like an SL7, but it's a Windspace. It's like an SL, and so it's never anything against the brand per se, but from a business decision perspective, like, yeah, it's just really easy to sell a Specialized bike, like no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if the frame is $1,500, how much could you really sell it for? Like, people are trying to get what they paid for it, and I'm like, it's usually not the case. Like, you're gonna have to take a hit. And yeah, they're usually dumbfounded, whatever. Because I help out a lot of these people because they see my channels, and I showcase it, and they buy it, and they ride it for a little bit, and they're like, "Hey, the sport's not for me. I want to get out of it." And I'm like, "What, dude? Like, I'm sorry, but that's just what it's selling for on the used market."
All right, boys. I reckon that might be us done. Chris, Grant, thank you very much for your time, gents.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, man.
We'll see you all next week.